Good to see all of you. Hello, welcome. Come on in, everybody. Everybody, come on in. Mm. Well, welcome. Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so get sure to subscribe to me there. Also, I'm part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can guys find me on RBN, on the JB Show on Sundays at 1, on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4, and the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. Also, thank you so much to all of you who've already liked the stream. Don't worry, I've been watching. And thank you so very much to all of you who will like to stream in the future. This is just a preemptive thank you. Also, to anybody who is a subscriber, a member, or anyone who is a patron on Patreon or Coffee, thank you so very much. For without you guys, I would not have a channel. So thank you so very much to all, one and all. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Today is the 14th of March, 2023. So good to see you. And I'm going to tell you guys my dilemma in a second. But first, I want to get to all the people who are in the chat to say hello. Hello. CBC voter says, oh no. We'll get into that. All right. Raziel the Great coming in saying, I'm working and I switched tabs to see the stream. I see the title and I thought, cancer? Oh no. Well, I need new glasses. Clearly my vision is off. Yeah, it's not cancer. All right. Extra booyah. Uncle Warren's in the chat saying, hey, JB and fam. So good to see you, Uncle Warren. All right. Yes. Please make sure to hit the like. That pushes me out into the algorithm. Much appreciated. Miguel, who is a JB member, says, peace. So good to see you. Give Miguel some love in there. Sarina Sawyer says, good afternoon, comrades. Good to see you, Sarina. Give her some love as well. All right. We have Wadi, who is also a JB member, saying, hey, everybody. Good to see you, Wadi. Bryce is up in the chat saying, sup, JB. Good to see you, Bryce. My brother from another mother. All right. Who else we got up in here saying hello? Old Man Barker coming in saying, hey, buddies. Hey, Old Man Barker. All right. The Jam Mom coming in saying, you're. All right. We have CEB Applejack. Salute, family. Good to see you, CEB. Go ahead, doing the damn thing, trying to raise money for people who are disenfranchised, making sure that people actually live a decent life. Thank you so very much. John Kemper, a.k.a. Blue Marvel, Blue Devil in the house. Good to see you. All right. He's a cold brother. Oh man, it's so good to see you. Seeing you guys just actually made my day even better. I'll be real with you. All right, Terry Connolly saying, hello, fam. Good to see you, Terry. Reality Revolution, who is a JB member, saying, hey. Good to see you. Oh, yeah. All right, who else I didn't get to say hello to? I want to make sure. All right. We have Willingly Nomadic say, hey, yo, what are we chatting on today? I got something, a story I want to share, but I also got some other stuff to talk about. Liam Doris coming in saying, good afternoon, comrades. Good afternoon, Liam. All right. Sulamoon saying, hello, comrades. Peace, love, and solidarity. That's what I love to see, baby. Krona Ursa up in the chat saying, hello, everyone. We got Jenna Colby. Wait. Jenna Colby coming in, giving us some love. All right. We got Sweary Fury coming in saying, bestie, ooh, look at Sean. Yes. Somebody get you some Neosporin because I'm about to cut you, baby, in a good way. You know what I'm saying? All right, man. It's so good to see all of you here. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was, and I'm gonna be real with y'all. Can we talk? Can we talk? I was real when I said I was going to cancel the show today. I just was not feeling like it. No, I just didn't. Desert Mantis, did I say hello to you today? I want to make sure. Desert Mantis, hello, good to see you. I'm like, did I say hello? I don't know if I did. If I didn't, I'm sorry. But hello. CEBG Applejack, thanks for the super chat. Says we want to target Warren, Ohio this time. Oh, okay. So CEB Applejack is doing some mutual aid, and they go to different. They're going to be going to a different city. So if you guys follow them on Twitter, and if they have some, help needed for giving out some mutual aid, then help them out. It's basically helping out your fellow neighbors. So if you guys can do that, then also follow CEB Applejack on Twitter as well. We have Christopher Romero says JB with the fit. Thank you so much. And a non-user just pouring in and saying sometime one just needs some personal time. Yeah. So the thing is that I was exhausted. Okay, so I took a bit of a staycation. I spent the weekend with a friend because I really needed it, and I was just exhausted. It's like a mental and physical exhaustion, plus dialysis 3 times a week, and then on top of it, I got some bad news that a friend of the family had passed on Sunday, and so that took a lot of mental energy, emotional energy, as well. So we're dealing with that, and this has been a friend of the family for well over 30 years. She was a beautiful, beautiful soul, a very loving woman who was, I didn't even know I was going to talk about this, but she was kind. She was KIND. She was kind. And she loved people. She was boisterous. She was loud in a very good way. She was fun. She loved to laugh. She loved to sing. When me and my family, when I was 6, maybe going on 7, we had no place to go. We were about to be homeless for a second time. And she took us in. I remember sleeping on the floor in her living room when we had no place to go. And she, without hesitation, even though economically she wasn't in the best place, but she took us in. And her and my mom have been buddies for over 30 years. My mom said, that's my buddy. And she died because she was a dialysis patient like me. And she had cancer too. And they put her on hospice over a week ago because they knew that she just wasn't doing well. Here's how close her and my mom are. She named her daughter after my mom. Her daughter has my mom's middle name. So my love goes out to her family, especially her daughter, because it's one thing to lose a parent, but to lose a parent while you're still a young adult, that's tough. And that's something that I couldn't imagine. So Love to you. And yeah, so my family's dealing with that. But yeah, so that's one thing I had no idea. That just came up to my brain. I guess that was really weighing on me. So I really wanted to get that out. Um, so yeah, but yeah, I honestly did not feel like streaming today, partly because of the emotional fatigue, as well as some physical fatigue. Um, and there's times where a lot of people don't realize that in this space it can get taxing. Um, People think that we just turn the camera on, sit, and just talk, when in reality it takes, you know, this takes energy, especially being disabled. This takes energy, but also on top of that, doing the research. If you have guests, you have to deal with the logistics of that. If guests run late, if guests have um, technical issues, if you have technical issues, so many different variables that go into this. And so that's why I was like, I feel like I'm going to cancel. And I got a soothing talk from a colleague. She knows who she is, and told me it's okay to take breaks. And you know, the funny part is, I started reading a book in kind of regards to this. I just got it yesterday, but I didn't start reading it until this morning, and I just got through the introduction. But this book here, it is titled "Laziness Does Not Exist" by Dr. Devon Price. And so I'm going to be reading this. I'm probably going to be reading this on my own time. I'm not sure if I'm going to read it on the channel, because I'm trying to start off with some more revolutionary people, some theory, things like that. I may get into this on the channel a little bit later, a few months down the line, but I want to read this just on my own. But this is a book called Laziness Does Not Exist. I didn't get it brand new. I got it from thrift books because, number one, it's cheaper. Number two, JB ain't got money like that. And so I heard this book was really good, and it actually is going into how the system works, and how we are constantly told that because you're not productive, that means you're lazy, when in reality, that feeling of laziness is really your mind, your body, and your heart telling you, stop, chill. You need to take a break. And sometimes you may feel like we didn't do enough physically, or as produce that much. And so we feel inadequate, and we feel like we didn't do enough, when in reality, it could also be just our emotions affecting us physiologically to the point where we don't want to do anything. And really, it means that we need to go inward and go, okay, so what is affecting me emotionally and mentally in order to make me feel so exhausted that I don't do the things that I would like to do? Not necessarily produce, but do the things that I would like to do. Hobbies, hanging out with friends, things like that. The things that lead into that depression. Because depression isn't just sadness. Depression is wanting you to cut yourself off from all of your emotions because there's something wrong. And sometimes what is wrong isn't necessarily always chemical. I'm not saying that it isn't, because number one, I'm not a doctor, so I am not giving any type of medical advice whatsoever. What I'm saying is that we have to deal with a system that affects us physiologically, both mentally and emotionally, to the point where it puts us in a place where we start to want to be devoid of our own selves. We want to devoid ourselves from our emotions. We want to devoid ourselves from our mentality, because we have to deal with this system, because it's a system that constantly perpetuates this need for production. Why is the need for production? For profit. And the story I'm going to be getting to actually has to deal with that. But That's one of the things I think that we need to really square with, is the fact that we literally live in a system that kills us day in, day out. We live in a system where we know that the government's working against us because the government doesn't give a shit about us, right? We know that every single time we go into work, we have to deal with customers that we don't like. We have to deal with bosses that we don't like. We have to deal with grueling jobs that some of us, even if we make a good amount of money, we don't like it because it's soul crushing. And we would like to do something that's more simple, more chill, and make a living wage, but we can't because we absolutely have to go for these high paying jobs that are really soulless. And then you have the other side of the spectrum where some of us, we would like to do more, but we can't because some of us have to go to college and then get into debt, and we don't want to get into that debt. Or we have went to college and then we got into debt. And then once we got into debt, now we come out going, that industry is not popping no more. Remember, everybody's like, oh, this industry is popping. Go to school for that. All right, I'm going to go to school for that just because of financial payback. We didn't go because of the fulfillment that we would get for it. We go back for the financial payback. And so then you go to school, and then guess what? You get into that industry, and now it's coasting. It's no longer popping. And guess what? You're now not making that much money because you followed the advice of some of those administrators and some of those guides that said, oh, this industry's popping. Yeah, at that time, but not anymore. And so we get into this cycle where we are just like, is this living? I don't want this. And this is felt especially among my generation, especially if you are if you're a millennial, Gen Y, as we used to call ourselves, guess what? You're feeling this a lot. I'm sure Gen X is feeling it too, especially since they are getting older. They're starting to get to AARP age, and they're now starting to feel, oh, snap, something is wrong. Gen Z, they're already feeling it right out of high school. They're like, oh my God, what in the hell is going on here? How? And they're looking at us, like the Gen Z are looking at us. They're like, how are you doing this? And we, at the millennials, are going, we don't know. We have no idea what the hell we're doing. And the thing is, it's like, it's not that we don't know what we're doing, is that things are so messed up to the point where what is there left? So that's what it is, man. And there's so much that all of you are going through. Some of y'all are looking at your bank accounts. You go into the app on your phone and you see that red. And then you see those couple of overdraft fees that also got charged into your account, the money that you don't have. Some of y'all, if I asked you what a savings account is, you guys, savings account, what the hell is that? I ain't got nothing. When people say, oh man, I had to dip into my savings, I'm like, you have savings to dip in? What? You have savings? Oh my God. You know what's sad? To me, if anybody has savings to dip in, I consider them privileged. You're privileged if you have savings to dip in. That's how bad it is. There is no bootstrapping your way out of this. There is no voting your way out of this. I don't think there is. I'm at a point now where I'm looking at this and I'm seeing when you've been stolen from constantly, what is there to come back from? Especially if the powers that be were the accomplices in helping to steal from you. That's what happened. And then the people who stole from you, they tell you why you're being so lazy. Stop eating avocado toast. Stop getting your coffee from Starbucks. Start saving your pennies. Pinch pennies. Get a roommate. Skip breakfast. Those same people that stole from you. Maybe if you just work a little harder. 60 hours a week? I was doing 90 hours a week just the other day. You guys aren't working hard enough. Oh, you guys actually want to cancel your student debt? Didn't you sign the contract? Yeah. I haven't gotten to the Q&A portion of this stream, but I'm just venting right now because I'm just sick and tired of it all. I know you are too. The crazy part is this isn't just affecting certain small subsets of society now. It's now affecting people who would otherwise be socially privileged. Even a cis, white, straight male is suffering this system now. Go to Appalachia right now. How many cis-het white males are literally struggling right now? Because they're now starting to see, they're like, oh my God, what in the hell? People who consider themselves to be conservative are like, holy crap, what in the hell is this? People who think or feel in a liberal way are going, this ain't what it's supposed to be. And this is why channels like mine exist. And corporations are constantly extracting from you more and more and more until the point where you have nothing left. What was it, the phrase, you will own nothing and be happy? Isn't that what they said at the World Economic Forum? Yeah, that's what they said. Baba Cohen says Appalachia was always an oppressed nation. Go to the cities, go to California, to the city dwelling elite. Life is getting worse for them too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Zoe says neoliberalism made us all second-class citizens. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sulamun says WEF should be renamed what the F. That's true. In fact, you know what? It's so true. I'm going to drink to that. Thank you. Damn, this tea is good. Holy shit. But yeah, And that's my gripe right now, because the thing is that we literally have a proxy war going on in Europe. I have to be careful how I say things now. And so, because of that proxy war in Europe, we see how all this money is going to that particular country. Meanwhile, black people in Jackson, Mississippi ain't got no clean water. People in Flint, Michigan ain't not got no clean water. People in East Palestine, Ohio ain't got no clean water or no clean air or no clean soil, right? You got people that are living out in the street in Skid Row in LA. Let's not forget the people in Boston that are also coming out on the street. People here in Orlando ain't got nothing, right? What about those of you in different places like Minnesota? What about places like Illinois and Chicago? What about people like you in Louisiana? What about the black people in places like Georgia? What about they're trying to build a cop city in Georgia, really as a response to any type of social uprising, social rebellion in order to change the system? They're literally preparing to fight against the change that the people actually want. Why? Because they don't want to change it. That's what's going on. And there's a resistance to that. And that resistance, honestly, is because if we change the system, that means that the people that have the most won't have the most anymore. And for us, it's like, what's so wrong with that? What's so bad about it? But for them, it's like, well, we won't be as rich. Boo-hoo, we won't be as rich. Thanks for the super chat, Reality Revolution. I'm studying all the ways governments are killing us globally. Let's do a show about that. You'll be astonished at I'm learning. Yeah, there's a lot that's going on right now. Definitely. Thank you so much for that. I call it eugenics. It's eugenics via neglect and eugenics via austerity. That's pretty much what it is. So, yeah. Screen Arts Media says people renting rooms, living in cars and RVs, no security at all. Willini Pneumatic says, God forbid they got to live life like us. Yeah. Wabacoin says they're entitled as they want free stuff. Miguel says, I recently had some friends visit from Mexico and they were shocked at all the homelessness around. Imagine they did not expect that. Yeah. By the way, to all my international people abroad, if you guys are thinking of moving here, the United States is only good for wealthy people. If you want to visit, go ahead. Come to Florida. Give JB a visit. We'll have tea. But living here, do not come. In the words of Kamala Harris, do not come. Do not visit. Because guess what? This system will screw you over. Especially if you're in a developed nation, keep your health care. If you go get free college, keep your free college. If the taxes are a little high, but you're getting a little something better, okay. Now, it's still not that great because you're still probably in a Western imperial nation and they're still doing imperialist stuff. Change your government there and work on them. But do not come to the imperial court. Please don't. A world terrorist form. Yeah, yeah. So that's one of the things. And I was going to do kind of a Q&A, to talk about some stuff. And you guys have some questions, go ahead and submit it. And, and even if I'm in the middle of what I'm talking about, then, I'll get to those questions as well, because that's also very important. Before I do that, thank you so much to Holistic Radical for becoming a member. Clap it up for Holistic Radical. Thank you so very much. Boo, 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 pew, pew, pew. Thank you. All right. Now, let's check in. All right. We'll get back to there. Okay. So, one of the stories that I wanted to cover was a lot of people are talking about Silicon Valley Bank. I was questioning whether I was going to cover this subject because there's a lot of people that are talking about it. But on top of a lot of people talking about it, there are people who I have a lot of respect for that have covered it thoroughly. And I was like, is it really worth me covering? But then there are some new developments that have come about, right, that I can cover, right? And so, first off, to get what's going on in Silicon Valley banks, let's go to this article that explains what in the hell happened. Okay, because I was confused. I was like, what in the hell is going on? And really, if you go back in your mind to 2008, right, during the financial collapse, what happened? Well, basically, the stock market is basically like a big ass casino. And so they make bets. They lost on some of those bets, and they were a little too trigger happy when it came to those bets. And they lost big. They lost really big. And on top of it, they were talking a bunch of people who actually couldn't afford a home into getting a home, particularly a lot of Black people. And so a lot of people defaulted. And so since a lot of people defaulted, then those banks, well, that money wasn't coming in. So guess what? They defaulted. And so that caused a huge financial collapse, which Bush and Obama basically saved the financial sector, the stock market, basically. But they didn't save average people like you or me. So that's what caused a gigantic collapse. Now we are seeing the second biggest bank collapse in U.S. history. Let's get into it. So what you need to know about the collapse of SVB and Signature. So Signature Bank also collapsed as well. It says over and over again, we find this essential truth. Once banking was deregulated, the next crash becomes inevitable. Now, this is an article by Robert Reich, former labor secretary under Clinton, I think. Now, while I don't think Robert Reich has that much room to talk, he does give some of the facts of what's going on here, which is good. So we have to take the grains of truth, where we can find them. And he kind of circles around what really is the problem, but he doesn't necessarily pinpoint exactly what the problem is. But that's what I'm here for. I'm going to do it. So let's get into it. So it says on Friday, bank regulators closed Silicon Valley Bank, based in Santa Clara, California. Its failure was the second largest in U.S. history and the largest since the financial crisis of 2008. On Sunday, regulators closed New York-based Signature Bank as a rush to contain fallout. Officials at the Federal Reserve, Treasury, and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, also known as the FDIC, announced a joint statement on Sunday that depositors in Silicon Valley Bank will have access to all their money starting Monday. They'd enact a similar program for Signature Bank. So he goes on and says the surface story of the Silicon Valley Bank debacle is straightforward. During the pandemic, startups and technology companies enjoyed hefty profits, some of which they deposited in the Silicon Valley Bank. Flush with cash, the bank did what banks do. It kept a fraction on hand, which that fraction on hand is basically when you make withdrawals, they have that money on hand. So then they give that to you. Like, let's say you're at Silicon Valley Bank and you want to withdraw $200 because, I don't know, you have some bill you have to pay. And so they have that money on hand to give you to withdraw. So on their balance, they have that, but what they do is the rest of that money, they take that money and they invest it. And that money goes to investment and it grows. And then whatever they make off that investment, they keep the profits. And then the money is back in your account. Right? So they have that money on hand. They're supposed to have that money on hand for your account. But they also invest that money, some of that money, and then make money off of your money. That's what banks do. That's how they make money. Right? So they just don't, a bank just isn't holding your money. They're investing the money that's in there and then making profit off of the money that's in there. Off that pool of money between you and all the other members in that bank, all the other account holders. So, right? I'm not that good at finance, but that much I understand. Okay. So, and I'm not that smart when it comes to this stuff. So this is why articles like this are helpful. Okay. So let's get back into it. So it kept a fraction on hand and invested the rest, putting a large share into long-dated treasury bonds that promised good returns when interest rates were low. Now, he continues, but then, starting a little more than a year ago, the Fed raised interest rates from near zero to over 4.5%. As a result, two things happened. The value of Silicon Valley Bank's holdings of treasury bonds plummeted because newer bonds paid more interest. And as interest rates rose, the gusher of venture capital funding to startup and tech companies slowed because venture funds had to pay more to borrow money. As a result, the startup and tech companies had to withdraw more of their money from the bank to meet the payrolls and other expenses. But the bank didn't have enough money on hand. So, says in 1930s, bank runs were common, but Roosevelt administration enacted laws and regulations requiring banks to have more money on hand, barring them from investing their depositors' money for profit. It is the Glass-Steagall Act, ensuring deposits and tightly overseeing the banks. Banking become more secure and boring. And so, he said that lasted until the 1980s. So what they did was they repealed Glass-Steagall, culminating in 1999 when Bill Clinton repealed it in Congress. So then, in the 2008 financial crisis, and remember what Professor Richard Wolff always says? He says that a recession happens every 4 to 7 years, right? So you got 1999, 2008. Glass-Steagall gets repealed, 2008. Guess what? 9 years. So 9 years, which is a little bit overdue. 4 to 7 years, we typically have a recession. That being said, it was overdue, and the more overdue it is, the harder the fall it has, right? That's like me having my phone, and every 4 to 7 years it falls off this, you know, that far. Every 4 to 7 years. But the longer it staves off, the higher the altitude it goes, and the longer the drop it has. And so because of that, because of the system that we have, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Right? So because of the repeal of Glass-Steagall, they got greedy. Because capitalism facilitates and exacerbates greed. It allows for greed to happen. Remember what Gordon Gekko said, greed, for a lack of a better term, is good. So guess what? They did it, especially with the repeal and with, under Reagan, because Reagan wanted to deregulate the hell out of everything. Guess what? Bill Clinton was the same. He deregulated a bunch of stuff. So guess what? They started to repeal even more and more and more. Right? So then, of course, came the 2008 financial crisis, the worst collapse since 1929. It was the direct result of financial deregulation. Alan Greenspan, chairman of the Federal Reserve from 87 to 06, called it a once-in-a-century credit tsunami. But pressed by critics, Greenspan acknowledged that the crisis had forced them to rethink his free market ideology. He said, "I have found a flaw," he told a congressional committee. "I made a mistake. I was shocked." Shocked! Shocked! I'm shocked. I couldn't believe capitalism isn't perfect. Oh my God, the free market. A bunch of people could have told you that. Isn't it funny how Alan Greenspan looks a lot like Rupert Murdoch? Just a quick thought. Anyways, but shocked. Shocked. Appalled. So let's go down to this piece. Because they put in Dodd-Frank. It says the Obama administration rescued Wall Street, but enormous cost to taxpayers and the economy. Estimates true of the cost of the bailout vary from $500 billion to several trillion. The Federal Reserve also provided huge subsidies to the big banks in the form of virtually free loans. But homeowners whose homes were suddenly worth less than the mortgages who owned them were left hanging in the wind. Many lost their homes. This is why a lot of Black people end up losing wealth in the economy, because Black wealth tanked under Obama because he favored the banks instead of working people. Says Obama thereby shifted the cost of the bankers' speculative binge onto ordinary Americans, deepening mistrust of the political system, increasingly seen as rigged in favor of the rich and powerful. Because Obama is basically one of their goons, which somebody like Robert Reich should know better, especially since his boss, Bill Clinton, was also another one of those goons. But anyways, package of regulations put in place after the financial crisis, called Dodd-Frank, made by Chris Dodd and Barney Frank, was not nearly as strict as banking laws and regulations in the 1930s. It required that the banks submit to stress tests by the Fed to hold a certain minimum amount of cash in your balance sheet for protection against against shocks. But it didn't prohibit banks from gambling with their investors' money, because Wall Street lobbyists backed with generous campaign donations from Wall Street wouldn't have it. So what does that mean? They basically told their flunkies in the federal government, look, don't do this. In fact, we will make sure that you are employed forever until you die, basically. So do not regulate us. So guess what? And that's what they did. They did the bidding of the rich. Right? Privatize the gains, socialize the losses. So the gains, they get it all, but who gets left holding the pile of doo-doo out of their, that they put out there? Us. That's who gets left holding it. Okay. So that's what happened, right? And even though Dodd-Frank was in place, it was rolled back just a little bit of it. Whatever, it just is weak compared to Glass-Steagall. Was rolled back by Donald Trump, who in 2018 signed a bill that would reduce scrutiny over many regional banks and remove the requirement which bank assets under $250 billion submit to stress testing and reduce the amount of cash they had to keep on their balance sheets to protect against shock. Basically, it was the parameters were $50 billion and up, right? So if you had $50 billion in assets, then you had to submit to stress test, and you guys had to have a certain amount on hand. But what they did was they raised the parameters, right? Not raised, but they reduced the parameters. So you can be a smaller bank and not have to be subject to these type of stress tests to make sure that things like this don't happen. So now it's only for the really big banks. So the smaller banks can do this stupid BS, and guess what? They now put a bunch of people still at risk. Said this frees smaller banks such as Silicon Valley Bank and Citigroup Bank to invest more of their deposits to make more money for their shareholders and their CEOs, who pay is linked to profits. There it is. Whoop, there it is. That's what it is. It's linked to profits. Guess what? That means that they're making money off of money. And so because of that, then it's all about profit centered. This is capitalism, people. This is how it works. And so because they're making this up all for profits, who gets left holding the shit sandwich? Basically you and I, right? And some small business owners, some small tech companies, what have you. And so for us, guess what? If you're in East Palestine, or if you're in Jackson, Mississippi, or Flint, Michigan, or if your food stamps got cut, or if you're trying to cancel your student debt or your medical debt, or if you're trying to get health care for everybody, got some bad news for you. Now, this is just, gosh, this is some bullshit. Says Silicon Valley Bank's chief executive Ray Becker had been a strong supporter of Trump's rollback. Becker has served on the San Francisco Fed's board of directors. Of course! But here's the kicker. Becker, who is the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank, sold $3.6 million of Silicon Valley Bank stock under a trading plan less than 2 weeks before the firm disclosed extension losses that led to its failure. There's nothing illegal about corporate trading plans like the one Becker used, and the timing can merely have been coincidental, but it smells awful. So he knew something was happening. He smelled the smoke. He knew there was a fire close by. And so guess what? He decided to dip. But before that, he sold all his stock off. So he knew 2 weeks before all y'all did. And he made out like a bandit. Oh boy. So that's what's going on. Now, recently, some stuff happened. So now what they're doing is they are going to be guaranteeing deposits. Now, let me share my screen. And shout out to Case Study QB, always doing the damn thing. Case posted this clip, and it says, summarizing what President Biden said after Silicon Valley Bank collapse. What we effectively have done is guaranteed deposits across the country. You could say de facto nationalize the banks. That has a lot of ramifications. Let's get into it.
President Joe Biden assuring Americans and businesses that they're going to be able to pay their workers, and assuring Americans they're going to be able to pay their bills. He also talked about the actions that Janet Yellen took this weekend. Wanted to make sure that all customers would be protected and have access to their money. No losses will be borne out by the taxpayers, the president assured us. Also, the managers of the banks that were taken over will all be fired. The president also, his third point was that investors would not be protected. Those who invested in these banks would lose their money. He said that's how capitalism works. He said no one is above the law. If any laws were broken, those people will be brought to justice. He's also going to be calling for Congress to strengthen rules for banks, and made reference to some parts of Dodd-Frank that were, in his words, weakened over the past administration by Donald Trump. Of course, Wall Street Journal editorial page today disputed that fact, said that wasn't the cause of this past weekend. But the President of the United States saying at the end that Americans can rest assured that their money is safe. Let's bring in right now co-anchor of CNBC Squawk Box, Andrew Ross Sorkin, and ask you, Andrew, what did you hear there from the President?
Well, I think that he was trying to reassure Americans to keep their money effectively where it is, so there's not additional bank runs around the country at small banks. I think one of the things we saw happening over the weekend was the big banks, the JP Morgans and Bank of Americas, were getting phone calls saying, can I open an account immediately? This effort is aimed at that. What we've effectively done, though, is guaranteed deposits across the country. You could say de facto nationalized the banks. That has lots of ramifications. And I should say, while the good news is that hopefully this stems the tide, there's a real question about what the economic cost of this is going to be more broadly. The stock market this morning looks like it's going to open down. Why? In part because these small banks, which historically we didn't think were systemically important, now are, which means that they're going to be regulated. They're going to have higher costs, a higher capital cost. That means that loans to consumers and businesses are going to go up. That's going to cost the economy. So this is not over yet. And there's a big debate as to what it really means for the banking system, and also who was the beneficiary. These are not bailouts like 2008, but I'll tell you, the venture capital community in California, they were bailed out big time this weekend.
You know, it should be illegal for them to play with people's money like that. Imagine being an account holder at Silicon Valley Bank, just a regular account holder. You got your checkings, you got your savings, that's it, right? And let's say you just got your paycheck and you're about to pay some bills. You got to pay some bills. And you go to Silicon Valley Bank to withdraw, or you go to the ATM to withdraw, and you can't withdraw your money. Imagine that sinking feeling you must have. So, yeah, the FDIC had to come in and say, look, you guys will be able to withdraw your money. If I were with Silicon Valley Bank, I would withdraw all my money and close my account. I'd be like, nah, I'm done with y'all. And don't think to go to these big banks, because they're no different. They're no different. It's crazy how people thought, oh, well, they're smaller. Just because they're smaller, it doesn't mean much. But they're subject to the same risks too. And they can cause a systemic catastrophic failure. Look, I'll put it to you like this. Let's say you have a bunch of generators that are generating power to, let's say, a building. And some of the generators are bigger than others. You have some of the big, huge, gigantic diesel generators, all the way down to the itty bitty little gas power generators, right? And then you have some in between. You'll have maybe 4 or 5 big, huge, gigantic diesel generators. But then you have, about 100 medium-sized generators. And you have like 250 tiny generators, right? But if those 100 medium-sized generators, those smaller generators, and let's say 100 of those smaller generators were to fail, you don't think it wouldn't affect the system? It would. And because these banks are not subject to the scrutiny that was in place with Dodd-Frank, the very minuscule scrutiny that Dodd-Frank was in place, and the fact that that was repealed, then guess what? It happened. And so why did it happen? Because of their greed. Because they wanted to make more profit. Because capitalism is a system that requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. And people will be like, oh, it's just cronyism. No, capitalism by any other flavor is still capitalism. Just like chips by any other flavor is still potato chips. Suleiman says, hubby's employer put his retirement in stocks and he lost a buttload. He'll never be able to retire. Oh, my God. Yeah, I was with a friend, and he was looking at his 401k. He was looking at his 401k, and he was worried. Worried that if things crashed, and guess what? His retirement, gone. Those years of saving, gone. Poof. Kiss it goodbye. Would we really have that much to worry about if healthcare, housing, education, if things like that were guaranteed as a right in this country? Would we really have to worry about retirement that much? Let's say, hypothetically, food, housing, healthcare, and education. Let's say those four were guaranteed in this country, let's say all 4 were guaranteed, you would never go homeless. You would never not have health care. You would never go hungry, and you would never not ever have education. Let's just say those 4 things. Would this be as big of a worry for you? Anyone? Yeah, I don't think so. Q Gregor says, yep, 401k is Gen X, there's pension. Yep. I remember back when I was in high school, they were teaching us about applying for jobs and things like that. And the guy who was teaching us about applying for jobs and stuff, he would say either a 401k or pension plan. And it's like pension plans aren't around anymore because they want that money for themselves. They'd rather just take that money and just put it in the stock market and let it be subject to the volatility of the market. But they would never, ever want to give you a pension plan because that means that they have less profit. So that was the first clip. So Biden is making sure that depositors are able to take their money out, or secure the money. But the question is, what about the CEOs and the investors? What about them? Well, somebody's upset because this guy was talking about, Andrew Sorkin said that, it's essentially a de facto nationalizing of the banks, which I personally say, good, let's nationalize the banks. Because if there's no profit motive, then guess what? They're not willing to put your money at risk. If they're not willing to put your money at risk, then guess what? Then people will not have to worry. Yep. And as Roger Meadows, typically, tells me, which is a good thing, is, national public banks, so that we're able to increase our infrastructure. But I also would like to see public banking, preferably postal banking, like we had back in, I think up to the 60s. I think we had postal banking. So you literally could go to the post office and bank there. You didn't have to go to a private bank in order to open an account. We used to have postal banking. I think we should have that again. But then guess what? If we had a postal banking system, they wouldn't be subject to all of the collapses that are happening because they would be backed by the federal government. And they wouldn't be so trigger happy to taking your money out of your account to invest it into this volatile system and then possibly losing. Now, okay. So CNN decided to interview this guy. Dear God. Kevin O'Leary. And he talks about the collapse. A capitalist. And he complains. Now, I'm okay with the tears of capitalists. I'm okay. But he's going to cry like a petulant baby. I can't stand it. But it's important to hear what he has to say because, well, it's just good to hear. All right, let's go.
What are you hoping to hear from President Biden?
Well, I think I know what he's going to say. I don't think he'll say it in the way I'm suggesting, but what effectively happened over the weekend is that he nationalized the American banking system. It's no longer a risk. It's no longer private in any sense. It is now backstopped by the government, ultimately the taxpayer. So it doesn't.
First off, number one, I would love if it was nationalized because that means that the risk is not there. Because why are we going to allow these financial institutions to put our money at risk? I don't think that's right. I don't think that's a good thing to do. Like if somebody wants to do it personally, then but I just don't agree with private banks. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. But and by the way, I hate to put it this way, but anybody that calls themselves Mr. Wonderful is a pretentious bastard. Let's just be real. The amount of arrogance is sky high. Anyway, I just had to say that because this guy just rubs me the wrong way.
No matter how bad you are as a bank manager, and a good example is what happened at Silicon Valley Bank. That was a combination of a negligent board of directors and idiot management. That's a very powerful cocktail when put together, and it completely wiped out that bank. And that's what should have happened.
But if they have made a huge amount of money instead, would you be saying the same thing, Kevin O'Leary? Like, you're willing to poo-poo on all of the losses, but if they were to make a whole bunch of gains over it, people be damned, screwing people over, then you probably would have been like, oh, okay, cool. God damn.
We knew before the weekend started that every account with $250,000 or less was insured, and anything beyond that, which is generally business accounts or sophisticated investors, was not. But that's all changed. Now you have no risk in any bank anytime, and you as the taxpayer bear that going forward.
When we spoke on Friday, I said, how big a deal is this, Kevin? And we were texting, you said next week the real trouble starts when they can't make payroll. Now it looks like they will be making payroll, I would imagine. So what do you think? Do you think that maybe the pressure is off now, that things are going to go back to normal, or is there still more fallout here?
No, they'll never go back to normal. Two things are going to happen. This quick move, this policy decision, was to try and stop a run on small banks, mid-sized banks. I don't think long-term that's going to work, because why would you take even 1% of risk keeping your money, or at least all of it, in a small regional bank? You're going to diversify. And I think that's the first lesson that wasn't being adhered to, is when you have liquid assets, you want to make sure it's diversified. And the rule we've put in place for our portfolio companies is no more than 20% in any one financial institution, because you never know where the black swan is swimming. In other words, every single institution has an idiot manager. Big ones, small ones, that's been proven by history. You just don't know where they are. And that's the same for every sector of the economy. But the banking system's different. We have 11 sectors in our economy. The banking system, financial services, is one of them. But it services all other 10. So what's really happening when the president steps out in a few moments is he's basically saying, look, I can't take this risk anymore. I'm just going to nationalize the whole thing. And that's the way we should look at banking going forward. Nothing more than highly regulated utilities. And that has profound impacts for you an investor. If you thought putting your money into bank stocks was a good idea, you should change your mind this morning forever. And should you own bank bonds? You were taught that lesson over the weekend. If you owned equity in Silicon Valley Bank, it's worthless. If you own the bonds, it's
Kevin,
worthless.
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Kevin. I didn't differentiate between the small and medium-sized banks that were given more lax requirements in that 2018 legislation and the big guys, because the big guys closed up on Friday, and there's a flight to safety to JP Morgan, to Citigroup, et cetera.
That doesn't mean you should not assume that just because they're big, they can't fail. Managers make mistakes all the time.
No, but they are held to higher, but they are held to stress test requirements, higher capital and liquidity requirements because of Dodd-Frank. That didn't get diminished for those big ones.
And you should assume that stage is going to be lifted even higher on them. So they're going to be even more regulated as they become more concentrated and far less profitable. That's my point.
Far less profitable. See, the goal is profit. That's basically what it is. But the thing is that it's supposed to be the greater the risk, the greater the reward. But once that risk happens, if you fall, then guess what? It's going to be a huge fall, a great fall. And so because of greed in this capitalist system, which is inevitable, they will make bigger and bigger risks. They will continuously bet high because they want to make as much as possible. They're not going to bet small, even if the parameters of the gains are more higher. They're not going to do that. They're continuously betting. And it's not their own money, it's your money that they're doing. That's why a capitalist system does not work, because they're constantly making risks, and with risks come either reward or famine. And so guess what? Now federal dollars have to go in and shore up and protect the people, when in reality, we shouldn't have had that in the first place. And now you got people like Kevin O'Leary that are pissed off at the fact that, people are getting shored up. Well, guess what? It was not the fault of somebody who has a checking or savings account. It's not their fault. And yet, he's like, well, they shouldn't have put in that risk. Well, maybe that risk shouldn't have been there in the first place. Maybe, just maybe, Glass-Steagall should have stayed in place. I go farther than Glass-Steagall. I say just nationalize all of it. But that's just me. Dear God.
That's my point. This really does make you think about owning bank stocks long term. I think they'll be underperforming the index for decades to come. That's my personal opinion. But it's the behavior of you as an investor in the actual accounts. If you're a business, you can't put it all in one financial institution. Certainly, everybody learned that lesson over the weekend. So diversification is going to matter. But this has fundamentally changed the way you should look at banking, because I'm not really comfortable that all of a sudden we've de-risked everybody all of the time. It was a good idea to de-risk $250,000 and make more sophisticated investors think about their behavior and how they should put their capital to work. Get diversity. You don't have to do that anymore, according to what the president's going to say. You have zero risk, and that has consequences. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and this is going to be very expensive for shareholders of banks long term.
All right.
I would never put my money into a bank stock ever again.
Oh, Kevin O'Leary. Kevin,
yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Oh boy. There was a point that I wanted to point out. Is it in here? It's not in there. But yeah, so there was an article that I was reading that was saying how a small percentage of our sector was finance. And because of a small percentage, I think it was like 10% of the sector was finance. And then once the repealing of these different laws happened, it raised it to like 40%, which is higher than manufacturing. And so that's the system that we have. It's wanting to make money off of money for the sake of making money, and profit's the name of the game. So that's it, man. And people sitting here, you know, thinking, oh, we just gotta regulate a little bit more. And really, look, every single time you try to put guardrails on capitalism, it shakes it off. And Kevin O'Leary's saying, oh, well, it's their fault that they put all this, you know, they did, you know, these risky bets. Thing is that capitalism is a beast that says you have to do more risky bets in order to make more profit, because you have to make more last year than you did the year before. You have to make more the last quarter than you did before. So fiscal year 2022 has to be, you know, fiscal year 2023 has to be more than fiscal year 2022. You have to do that. And if you don't, then guess what? Shareholders will not be happy. And if shareholders aren't happy, then guess what? They pull their money out. Because they want to do it, all they want to do is just make more money off of the money that they put in. And so there's that constant risk that needs to happen according to this system. And so because of that necessary risk, that means that the risk is still there. Bill Bradley says the falling rate of profit exists inherently in capitalism. Even if it's heavily regulated, there is no saving capitalism in the long term. Yeah. By the way, do you think that this is the beginning of a massive fallout? Let me know in the chat if you guys think that this is what's the start of, or we're starting something massive. Because right now, from what I'm seeing, it's 3 banks so far that have had that are, you know, basically going under. Is it going to be more? Because back when I think it was in 2007. Yeah, it was 2007. And I was watching the news, and I think it was Citigroup. Was it Citigroup that lost $19 billion? And I was sitting there. How old was I? Yeah, I was in my 20s. And I was like, how in the hell do you lose $19 billion? How? And they did. It's poof, like that. And I was like, what in the world are they doing? Come to find out, we found out what they did in 2008. And instead of actually, punishing the people who put us at risk, what did the government do? Well, they said, it's okay. Here's some money. You guys will be all right. Colin says there was a recession after 9/11 at the start of the Iraq War invasion. So 2001 and 2003 as well. Thank you so much. Bill Bradley says, and if Obama had bailed out the people, the banks would have still gotten bailed out because people could have paid their mortgages. This is the point that I wanted to point out. But instead, they skipped the people and paid the banks. And the banks were still like, give me your money for your mortgage. Instead of paying the people so that they can pay their mortgage, they paid the banks directly. And the banks were like, thank you, government. Give me your mortgage. Oh, no. This is just for me from them. It's not. No, give me your mortgage. Oh, you don't? Okay. Give me your house. So there's a lot of foreclosures. A lot of people lost their home. Even though the banks still made out like bandits. Janice Anderson says, doing everything they can to not call it a bailout. At this point, the banks should be made public. Public banking has proven to be stable for profit. More stable than for-profit banking model. And the thing is, that's what we need. We need stability. We don't need this risk. This risk is what is going to destroy us all. And capitalism is always playing chicken with our environment. It plays chicken with our health. It plays chicken with our, it plays chicken with our, our homes, our livelihood, our jobs, This system is like taping a whole bunch of steak and chops to your butt naked body, and you go out running among a pride full of hungry lions and hyenas. And you wonder why your ass gets bit. That's capitalism. You realize, look, you're literally trying to outrun a system like this, and then you're going to get bit. Why not get out of the enclosure? But they don't want to, because they want to risk it. Because they got to catch that dollar. Butt naked, running through. And Lady Gaga's meat dress. And this is why public banking is necessary. And postal banking. I'll put it like that. Postal banking. I see it's necessary. No more private banks. No. That's what I think. And people who are capitalist or capitalist sympathizers will look at me like I'm crazy. Raziel the Great says, JP Morgan has more than $3 trillion under management. They are relatively safe compared to a local bank that only has $1 billion. Bill Bradley says scarcity is a myth. Careful of falling into the finite planet trap. Malthus assumed the finite resource of whale oil as if humans would not develop something new. Collins says roughly 90% of all money isn't physical. It can disappear whenever the banks want. Raziel says the big boys will be fine because the Fed will always socialize the losses and privatize their profits. Killer Grigor says BlackRock owns the homes now. Yeah. What are your thoughts on, guys? What are your thoughts on credit unions, by the way? Just wanted to get your thoughts. Because I know they're better than banks. I'm not sure if they are like immensely better, but I know that, you know, a lot of people put them at a definitely a higher regard, especially those of us who are anti-capitalist. Put them at a higher regard than private banks. So at least until we can get, you know, a public or, you know, postal bank again. Creative Experiment says severance packages end. Next round of layoffs, Fed rate hikes, horrible quarterly profits, falling housing market, inflation, and climate change all this month at the same time. Collapse this month. Creative Experiments, you say probably within the next 2 weeks? Because, and I think I'm not sure if I've had this conversation with Sabby before, but I was thinking that one of the biggest collapses I think is going to lead to a huge bottom falling out is the defaulting on student loans. I think a lot of people are going to default on student loans. It's going to be happening very soon because people are just starting to pay on their student loans regularly again. And I think that a lot of people are just going to default. And I don't know how, I don't know exactly when, but I feel like it's going to happen soon. And then that can also cause a major fallout, or at least contribute to a fallout. I just want to know you guys' opinion on that too, because I'm kind of curious. Yes, Brian. Yes. I can't say the word because I'm on YouTube now, but nationalized. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Igor says, I prefer credit unions. See, hence T says credit unions are regulated differently than banks. Now, is that difference better or worse, or just kind of like within the same realm? Oh, Ryan, happy birthday. Good to see you. Is it really your birthday? If it is, then yeah, happy birthday. Everybody give Ryan a happy birthday in chat. 2 to 3 weeks before the collapse. Yeah, Roger Minos talks about public banks all the time. Yeah. I want to talk about it more because the thing is that at least while capitalism is being dismantled, there's some apparatuses in place so that once the switch happens, then there's some institute, it's kind of like even if the house burns down, the block foundation is still good and it still exists. And so, you know, and you add it to that foundation and it's still there because the fire didn't really affect the concrete. You know what I'm saying? Bill Bradley says productive labor is transformative. Absolutely. Danny says some credit unions are owned by large corporations. The CEFCU in my areas was founded to serve Caterpillar employees. Maybe better, but not on our side in any way. Interesting. Yeah. Also, Wells Fargo was involved in slavery, by the way. So, okay. So let me go to Rockfin because I got a couple of chats in the Rock. Okay. Let me enlarge this just a little bit. Just a little bit. All right. Kay says there was a big crash in 2021 and the CARES Act was the bailout, FYI. Yes. In fact, if I remember correctly, I think it was in March of 2020. Was it 2020? I think March of 2020, they actually dumped $4 trillion into the market to keep it propped up. So, yeah. Kay says the CARES Act was a stealth bailout. I think Barney Frank left Washington to work for Signature Bank, which would make it ironic that it failed in the recent failure. Actually, there's another point that I need to make. And yeah, you kind of beat me to it, Kay. But I have a clip I'm going to share regarding that. Fred Edwards said, not that many regular account holders at Venture Capital Bank. Okay, that makes sense. Kay says there's at least one state that has a public bank. I think that's North Dakota. It says it's been there for like 100 years, was initially created to help farmers, and is very popular. I think it might be Nebraska. Don't quote me. Need to check. I think North Dakota, because I know. I think North Dakota. I have to check. Dominic says our political system is not the problem. It is the people we elect to run it that are the problem. We don't need a revolution to change it. We need an evolution in learning how to change the people that run it. Using today's technologies, constituentpolling.org shows how working class voters can have a voice in their system. It offers a way to eliminate corporate money in politics. Check it out. Okay, thank you. And then Kay, thanks for the tip, says there's a really good book by David K. Johnstone called Free Lunch that outlines what happened to company pensions in the 1990s as a result of corporate lobbying and deregulation. Highly recommend. Free Lunch. Okay. Also, very rapid short-term trades, investments which are made by computer algorithms rather than human beings, create a lot of volatility. The banks used the bailouts to foreclose on all these homes. I remember every week in 2008, 2009, the local paper had special insert listing the hundreds of foreclosures. I have also heard the student loan bubble going to burst at some point. North Dakota. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Why did I put that there? Oops. All right. But yeah, there was a point that I wanted to show as well. Because one of the namesakes of the bill, Dodd-Frank, well, Barney Frank isn't so pure either. Let me see. So let me share my screen really quick. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. All right.
This is 2018. Dodd-Frank was passed early in the Obama administration after the 2008 financial collapse. In 2018, they came back and revised it a bit. It raised the too big to fail threshold.
Revised it a bit. Is that what you want to call it? John King revised it? Oh, he revised it a bit. Is that what you want to call it? Like, okay, that's how, like having some Kool-Aid and you take half the Kool-Aid out and add more water, right? And you just revise it a bit, right? Or that's like having a bottle of ketchup, right? And you got a little bit of ketchup left, and then you pour some water in it and shake it up just to use it. Oh, you just revise the ketchup a little bit, right? Is that what we did? Or you got a little bit of milk left, but you don't have enough milk for cereal, so you take some of that milk, you put a little water back in it, shake it up, you revised it a little bit. Is that what it is? Is that what it is, John King? Is that what we call it now? Revising? You literally have the word behind you, John King. Rollback. That's probably a better word to use instead of revise. Let me tell you something. These corporate news stations, these corporate news media outlets, I'm telling you, they are always in favor for these people. They're always in favor for these corporations, for the big banks. I can't tell you how many times you'll see a Charles Schwab or JP Morgan or Chase Bank or some type of bank advertisement on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. CNN brought to you by Charles Schwab. Talk to Chuck. It's the same thing. They get paid by them too. So what's the difference? Like, dear God, these guys, man. John King, stenographer for these financial institutions. Golly.
Threshold from 50 billion to 250 billion. Essentially, a lot of smaller and up to 250 billion. So you're talking medium-sized banks got exempted from the most stringent regulations.
So that was the point. They were exempt from the regulations. So because of that, they weren't being looked at closely. So guess what? They got off scot-free. Goodness gracious.
It exempted certain banks from stress test. Again, the smaller and medium banks. Eliminated so-called living wills for some banks. And ease some of the mortgage reporting requirements on these smaller and medium-sized banks. Again, this is a legacy. This is a reboot, if you will, after the 2008 financial crisis. It passed largely with Republican support. Republicans were pushing this, but 67 votes in the Senate, including 17 Democrats. 258 votes in the House, including 33 Democrats. So mostly Republicans, but a sizable number of Democrats. Now,
that's all.
the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank specifically lobbied for these reforms. This is Greg Becker. He says that bank, the one that just collapsed, didn't pose a systemic risk, and that imposing the requirements, the Dodd-Frank requirements, outsized burden on us. That was his argument. Now, Barney Frank, remember, liberal congressman from Massachusetts, he was the lead House sponsor of Dodd-Frank. He introduced it with Senator Chris Dodd of Connecticut. He joined the board of Signature Bank. That's the New York bank that New York had to take over the weekend in 2015. In 2018, he said, Barney Frank, who pushed the big Dodd-Frank, said the rollback does not in any way weaken the regulations. When he said that, he was on the board of Signature Bank.
Y'all know what I'm about to say. Look, y'all already know. Y'all already know exactly what I'm about to say. The person that helped write that legislation went to work for a bank, to be on the board of a bank, and it's like, it's not really gonna matter that much. Now Signature Bank is also about to be bailed out, who Barney Frank was on the board of. So yes, that's the problem. Our government is bought and paid for, because even still, somebody like Barney Frank could leave government, retire from his seat in Congress, right? I think he was a senator. And then, or was he a congressman? Either way, he retires from his seat and then he goes to work on the board of a bank. That shouldn't be legal, in my opinion. It's like, is this guy already got a pension for the rest of his life? He's good. He's good. And then he goes and works for the board of a bank. And then, because of the rollbacks, he's like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. 5 years later. So, Chuck lost money. This is from Fortune magazine. Charles Schwab's fortune, battered by Silicon Valley Bank, collapsed, with his wealth plunging more than any other American billionaire in 2023. What happened to Chuck? There's Chuck. All right. Billionaire brokerage founder Charles Schwab has seen his personal fortune plummet in the aftermath of Silicon Valley Bank's collapse over the weekend. According to the Bloomberg Billionaire Index, which monitors real-time wealth of the richest people on Earth, Schwab has personally lost around $3 billion in the wake of Silicon Valley Bank's failure. Schwab, who founded discount brokerage Charles Schwab Corp in 1971, now has a net worth of $9.99 billion, according to Bloomberg's estimate, making him the 183rd wealthiest person in the world. The Bloomberg Billionaires Index shows that Schwab's fortune fell by 7.7% on Monday, thanks to the brokerage's tumbling share price, a personal loss of $828 million. Since March 8th, Schwab has had $3 billion wiped from his net worth, according to the publication. Since the beginning of 2023, he has lost almost $3.5 billion, meaning his wealth has fallen more than any other American billionaire this year. Let me ask y'all something. Remember when Elon Musk asked the question, how much would it cost to end hunger? Was it ending hunger in the world? And I think they came back and said it would be like $6 billion. Charles Schwab literally could have liquefied those assets, that wealth, and then essentially fed half the world. And yet, because of him having investments, it poof, gone. Crazy how that works, right? Trust me, I'm not shedding any tears for Charles Schwab. As much as Charles Schwab's fortune is derived from a stake in his eponymous company where he serves as chairman, Charles Schwab dropped almost 12% on Monday. The collapse of SVB marked a massive sell-off in companies in the financial sector. At one point during Monday's trading session, shares were down more than 20%. Investors have been particularly fearful of firms like Charles Schwab, which have a large bond holdings with long maturities, might be forced to sell such assets at a loss to cover rush of deposit withdrawals, thus falling into the same trap as Silicon Valley Bank. If Charles Schwab goes under, I'm going to laugh. But not at the people who have their retirement accounts, especially just average workers. I'm not laughing at them, but I would laugh at Charles Schwab. I would laugh at him. Because not only did you lose $3.5 billion, but now your company's going under. Yeah. But at the cost of whom? It's going to be at the cost of workers. Talk to Chuck, they said. Chuck gotcha, he said. Dear God. So, yeah, that's what's going on right now. My goodness. Ibrahim, thank you so much for the super chat. It says Kevin O'Leary was paid $15 million by FTX to promote and be their face, so I don't believe anything he says. He was with the FTX. I forgot about that. Oh, gosh. Mr. Wonderful got paid by FTX, and look at it now. Oh, my goodness. Mr. Wonderful, more like Mr. Grifter. Am I right? Yep, X, good to see you. It says, stopping by to say hi. Had one of the most lucid dreams in a very long time, though. Can't fit everything that was involved here. One of them, the horror dystopian matter. Okay. Good to see you, though. I'm telling you, man, Mr. Wonderful. Yeah, nobody wants to listen to you. I don't even know. Look, why in the world did CNN have him on? They say, look, just because you're rich, right? You are the voice of reason. Just because by virtue of you just having a bunch of money. Like, are we kidding right now? We're gonna listen to that guy? Are you kidding me? People who literally exploited to get their riches, we're gonna listen to those people? He has nothing to say that I find worth listening to. None of these rich people do. Whether it's Peter Thiel, whether it's Elon Musk, whether it's Charles Koch, whether it's Bill Gates, whether it's who's the owner of Berkshire Hathaway, that I forgot his name. Not worth remembering anyway. But they're not worth remembering. They're not worth listening to. Gosh. Anywho. Warren Buffett, thank you. I knew it had something to do with food. Warren Buffet. Yep. The FX says, I want BlackRock and the Vanguard to go under. Yeah, those companies, man, they're the worst. We really need them to just stop. Yes, Kate. Actually, you know what? This is worth, me showing on the screen because you just made a really good point, Kay. Kay says, so gross. You can lose $3 billion and still be ungodly rich. That's the system that we have. Look, I'm screwed if I lose $20. I'm screwed if I lose $20. And this dude can lose $3 billion and he's still ungodly rich? What in the hell? Like, my goodness. And he didn't work to get it. That's all due exploitation. Dear God. What the hell are we doing? I'm sorry, but I have to put it like this. We need to get out in these streets. Anyway, I gotta get going. I got stuff to talk about on RBN Live. We got to continue this conversation over there because this is just ridiculous. Anywho, look, I'll be getting into Assad Shakur's autobiography later this week. We're gonna be talking about that. I'm gonna be getting into chapter 8 or 9? Wait, where am I at? Chapter 9. Oh Lord, chapter 9. I'm past the halfway point. Okay. Well, this is gonna be good. So I'll be getting into that as well. Also, next week I will be doing more news stories as well. Be sure to catch clips that I will be uploading over the next couple of days from this stream if you have not catched it all. So I'll be doing that. Also, by the way, thanks to all the patrons on Patreon as well as Coffee. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this. And a special thank you to all the members. Yes, I do have memberships. Thank you so very much to all you guys for helping keep me afloat so that I can continue to keep doing this. Did you like the stream yet? Make sure to hit the like and also make sure to subscribe if you guys have not. I hope I didn't bore you guys today. I try to be entertaining but informative. And I know that I do things I have a lot of layman's terms for these things because I'm just still learning these things and I'm trying to share what I learned with you guys as I learn it. So hopefully you guys get to see that. Thank you so very much to everybody. Look, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Look, and like I always say, be good to yourself, especially when it comes to self-care. Sometimes self-care means relaxing not just your body, but your mind too. Centering yourself and trying to get yourself to a more tranquil place is an act of rebellion against the system. So, my good people, rebel and do good for you so that you can in turn do good for others. Mwah. Forehead kisses. Yeah, I love you. Looking all good. Go ahead and subscribe. I know you want to hit that subscribe button. I love it.